There's panic, there's chaos and mayhem across Lebanon after thousands of pagers exploded almost simultaneously. And these were pagers that had been acquired, according to reports emerging from Beirut, by the Hezbollah fighters after tension escalated with Israel after the October 8 terror attack in Israel. Hezbollah fighters were apprehensive about Israel intercepting mobile phone conversations and triangulating the movement of Hezbollah fighters. Hassan Nasrallah, who heads the Hezbollah, issued clear instructions to Hezbollah fighters to stop using mobile phones, and they switched to using pagers. An order was placed, according to reports, for close to 5,000 pagers. Some reports seem to indicate that there was a company in Taiwan that provided these pagers, though officially that company has issued a clarification saying the pagers that exploded had not been procured from them. But somewhere there was the poisoning of the supply chain or disruption of that supply chain when pagers were en route Beirut. They were intercepted, and according to some intelligence reports and assessments, PETN or plastic explosives were inserted in those pagers. Now, unlike mobile phones that are used for two-way communication, pager technology dates back to the 1990s and was one-way communication. Old technology, not very easy to intercept, though message goes from a person to a center, from that center to the receiving pager device. But then the information was that coded messages were sent to Hezbollah fighters. They would receive coded messages on their alphanumeric pager devices, and then they would carry out the task. Interception by Israeli intelligence agencies was extremely difficult. But in this case, since the consignment itself of pagers was intercepted, and apparently PETN, by some accounts it was close to 5 grams, by some more accounts it was between 5 and 20 grams of PETN or plastic explosives. A thin film was inserted in the pager device and a microchip which would receive the command and then heat up the battery to an extent that the PETN would explode on command. PETN is also a relatively safe explosive that is resistant to friction or a little rise in temperature. That is why it was perhaps the explosive of choice. In this case, those pagers were then distributed to Hezbollah fighters, not just in and around Beirut, but also Bekaa and other parts of Lebanon. And some of these devices were also sent to Shiite fighters in Syria. Therefore, the explosion that took place after the message was sent out apparently led to this massive explosion that took place in over 3,000 of those 5,000 pagers. As of now, reports from Beirut seem to indicate that there are 3,000 injured Hezbollah fighters and civilians, and about 8 to 11 people are dead. Between 100 and 150 are said to be extremely critical. In some instances, the pager device exploded when the pager was still at the waist belt or the belt of the recipient. In some instances, people were reading the message, and that is why their faces have been badly damaged. The message led to that explosion and it led to massive damage to the eyes, to the nose, to the face, to the waist, the area around the hip, or the area around the groin, just in case the pagers were kept in the pocket in front. And this has led to major despair, with thousands of Hezbollah fighters out of action. Hospitals are packed to capacity. There is no bed that's available, and not just in Beirut, but in several other parts of Lebanon. Reports in social media from doctors and healthcare officials say that there's a medical emergency across Lebanon. The Hezbollah, of course, has promised they will fight back. Of course, this conflict between the Shiite militia, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Israel dates back to the 1980s, when this Shia militia started fighting the Israeli forces. It's also led to raids like in 2006 into Israel. Israel, of course, hit back to a large extent. In fact, at one point of time in early 2000s, Israel, in the late 1990s, early 2000s, Israel went into Lebanon, and finally when it vacated, the Hezbollah claimed victory, saying it was because of their actions, because they had targeted multiple American and Israeli soldiers and strategic interests, that Israel was forced to withdraw. The Hezbollah under Hassan Nasrallah not only is a very powerful militia, it's also an extremely powerful political force. And some Hezbollah members of parliament and their kith and kin were also injured and in one instance killed in this pager attack. But what does this pager attack also point to? It points to the threat of one, supply chain disruption in terms of how that can be poisoned and consignments can be intercepted and tampered with. Two, if it can happen to a mobile phone, can the same happen? If it can happen to a pager, can the same happen to your mobile phone? That is the big threat. And if it happens to your mobile phone, imagine there's a battalion of soldiers that's heading to a war zone and simultaneously multiple mobile phones explode. Same way, if that consignment of mobile phones is intercepted, if those mobile phones, the batteries have this layer of PET, and it may sound in the realm of a James Bond movie or a spy thriller, but it could well be a situation where there is clear and present danger. In India, the focus therefore, especially when you have a threat on the northern front of an expansionist China, of a hostile terror state like Pakistan on the western front, and of course now that the threat that's emerging also on the Bangladesh front, should India actually focus on Atmanirbhar Bharat in a much bigger way in terms of manufacturing technology that can be disrupted and used in this way against the country. Communication equipment, for example, should it entirely either be manufactured at home or in very friendly countries? That's a point to think about, because very clearly there is clear and present danger.